Madam Deputy Speaker, I congratulate my right honourable friend from Roscoe and Lochaber, not only for securing today's debate, which is timely and important, but also for his speech and the way he conducted himself in the face of quite disgusting behaviour, quite frankly, from members opposite. And I thank Mr Speaker for granting the debate today as well. His leadership in the last few weeks, I think it's fair to say, has been in stark contrast to the leaders of the two parties in this place. Madam Deputy Speaker, the Prime Minister described people discussing the possibility of a second Brexit referendum as somehow betraying the first vote or as being a direct challenge to democracy. I might be wrong, but I cannot recall another Prime Minister suggesting that giving the people their say on a matter as being anti-democratic. What we are debating today is the real failure to honour that first referendum, because of course it has been this Prime Minister that has had the job of delivering on that result, and she has chosen her own path that looks certain to lead to defeat. So it is therefore this Prime Minister that has failed to honour that referendum result, and she has failed because she has been too scared to take on her ERG extreme Brexiteers in case they submitted those letters of no confidence to challenge her leadership. So unwilling was she to have her Peel moment with her party that she boxed herself into a corner that was impossible to extricate herself from. She could have shown leadership and chosen other paths, and that was acknowledged earlier on by the right honourable member from Broxtowe, quite rightly. The Scottish Government offered a compromise position that many in her own party would have thought would have passed this House last year if it had been supported, and that was to remain in the single market and the customs union, the least worst option on the table regarding Brexit. Sadly, Labour's leadership has been equally lacking. They have done nothing to be that real opposition to this Tory government. They have taken the tactical decision to take no position, to offer no leadership, to do nothing and wait to see what happens. That has clearly been in evidence over the last week. They are just as happy to kick the can down the road as this government is. And we know Labour doesn't really know what it wants to do with Brexit, and at every turn the leader of the opposition has, like the Prime Minister, looked at narrow party political advantage rather than work in the interests of all countries in these isles. And it gives me no pleasure to say that, because there are some, such as the right honourable member from Holborn and St Pancras and others in the Labour Party, who are doing what they can to shift the Labour leadership. But even in the narrow scope that Labour are currently operating within, they have failed in their objective by missing the opportunity to call the vote of no confidence last week, when we asked them to work with us to do so. I cannot think of a more inept and incompetent combination of government and official opposition, and at this time of crisis, that really is unforgivable. And that is what is causing the irreparable damage to the integrity of our politics, Madam Deputy Speaker, that the Prime Minister speaks of. An unwillingness of both the Prime Minister and the leader of the opposition to see beyond the end of their own noses. Rather than work with us last week to call a proper vote of no confidence before the Tories held their own, Labour ignored us. The Prime Minister won that Tory vote and Labour lost the initiative. And even when Labour ended up belatedly tabling the no confidence motion last night in a moment of absolute chaos in the Leadership Office and the Whip's Office, by all accounts, they still couldn't get it right, and it was left to the SNP, Plaid, the Lib Dems and my honourable friend from Brighton Pavilion to make it meaningful and not just a poorly executed political stunt. Perhaps those sensible Labour MPs who remain might now look to our amendment, support it and put pressure on their leadership to finally step up to the mark. And at this time of political crisis, the public are looking for leadership. The First Minister of Scotland has shown that leadership for the entirety of this Brexit process. Sadly, both the Prime Minister and the leader of the opposition continue to compete with who can be the most inept. Is it any wonder, then, Madam Deputy Speaker, that the people of Scotland in growing numbers want their chance to choose a different path, one of which leads to Scottish independence?
Will Quince.
Well, thank you.